Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our Hurricane Tropical Weather Outlook video for today, Monday, May 20th, 2024. Starting off with the National Hurricane Center homepage, just to kind of show right now in the Atlantic, nothing is expected. It is overall quiet, and nothing is expected in the Atlantic Basin over the next week, at least per the NHC. And in the Eastern Pacific, we can see that that does remain the same case. No development is expected, no model hints, and certainly the quiet we have right now is definitely welcomed. Taking a look at the satellite image of the Atlantic, just to kind of show, pretty quiet right now. You could especially see strong upper level winds, very prominent, especially across the tropical Atlantic. Even in the Eastern Pacific too, there's not too much energy to work with. We still have this ITCZ situation going on, but it doesn't look like anything is gonna try to concentrate and become any formidable system, unlike last week when we saw something at least try, but obviously it wasn't that successful. We also have some thunderstorms kind of here in the southern part of the MDR. This is also associated with the ITCZ, and this doesn't really look like anything is happening. And you could also kind of see back towards the east a little bit some Saharan air coming off, and we could actually take a look at that on the Saharan air layer map. Pretty dry, obviously, across the MDR. Lots of Saharan air into the Gulf. Probably one of a plume that came off maybe a week or so ago and traversed across the entire Atlantic, and now it is in the Gulf of Mexico. And you can actually see, because of that, the Gulf is pretty dry, not much convective activity ongoing there at all. So I guess that could be partially due to Saharan air or dry air of some sort that has made its way into the Gulf. But you can also see back to the east, more air coming off of Africa. It is expected this time of year since it is May, and usually in the early months of the hurricane season. I don't want this notification, but anyways, in the early months of the hurricane season, as I was saying, Saharan air typically comes off. It is a normal part of hurricane season, and we tend to see it anyways. Um, so it is just with us right now, and it'll continue to come off of Africa really throughout the rest of the year, but at stronger magnitudes and more intruding into the MDR. It'll continue to happen probably till around early August. And speaking of Africa, we don't take a look at how Africa looks a lot because Africa plays a huge role into how hurricane season plays out. It is usually the birth of where we get our impulses of energy that come off, our tropical waves, as we like to call it. They're basically really what it is, impulses of energy with some vorticity and obviously thunderstorm activity associated with it that traverse off Africa across the Atlantic. Sometimes they don't develop and sometimes they do and ends up becoming long tracked. The typical, notorious long tracked Cape Verde storms. Doesn't seem like right now, though, we have much in terms of the way of energy off of Africa yet. I did talk about this kind of active area just to the east. Doesn't look like it is a defined tropical wave though. And then even if we look off towards Africa, maybe there's some moisture exiting, what is that, around Nigeria or so. That's probably going to traverse westward, but it is very far south. This is almost the equator. And besides the fact that it's May, it's probably not even a tropical wave anyways. But other than that, Africa looks quiet right now. Still have ways to go till the hurricane season starts. Only starts in about a week or so from now. But we still have ways to go till things start to actually get active, and we actually start to look at things to develop to develop from impulses and waves that come off this region and end up trying to form in the MDR. Sometimes we could get that early on in the season. We saw it last year. I mean, with Brett and Cindy in the MDR in June, a rare dual combo, if you will, of MDR storms in June. We saw it last year, so it's definitely possible. Although I wouldn't bet on it happening, it is just something that we don't typically see every single year. But nonetheless, just to kind of get a look off of Africa right now, not much going on, certainly, especially when it comes to tropical waves, and so that definitely keeps things quiet for now. Really quickly, sea surface temperatures in the Gulf, just to kind of get an idea of how things look. We talked about sea surface temperatures being very warm in the Gulf. The shelf water still needs a little bit of work to do. We're still barely at the 26 degrees Celsius line, just along the northern Gulf Coast. You can actually see though some of these shelf waters beginning to heat up just off of the southwest coast of Louisiana. I guess registering at 27 Celsius. And then in the southern Gulf, even as far up into the central Gulf, although this is probably associated with the loop current, up to 28 degrees Celsius. And boy, in the Bay of Campeche, it is definitely boiling. Some areas seeing 30, and maybe that isobar in here, that small line, maybe right up against the coast. In the southern Bay of Campeche, we're seeing up to 31 Celsius. So very warm. Throughout the Gulf overall, it is well above normal. And this will play a huge factor, especially for the remainder of severe weather season. We've had a very active severe weather season so far this year. There was in fact very, very wide and very intense tornado in Kansas yesterday. And if you're a weather community geek, you probably saw that, everybody talking about it. Then Greed Timmer almost got caught in the middle of it. And there was also several days ago a very strong straight line wind event that hit Houston. And that has a lot of people questioning how really prepared Houston is for tropical cyclone impacts, although that is a whole nother debate that we could have. But bottom line, the Gulf is very warm, and even in the Keys too, they've had record heat and humidity. I think they broke the heat index record for the Keys. I forget which key it is though, but I think the heat index just over the last few days reached as high as 115. Very hot, definitely very muggy. And the bottom line, it just kind of throws out the idea that the Gulf is very warm. And that definitely does point out interests when it comes to early season activity, because it tends to be the Gulf that we worry about when it comes to activity. And the fact that it is warm, it definitely means that it is primed. And we are ready definitely to get early season activity in this area. And it looks like we might as well see that happen pretty soon, or in just a matter of a few weeks. And we'll go over that in just a moment. Really quickly, off the southeast coast, this is also another area that we sometimes watch, especially over the last few years. Sometimes we could get some of these mesoscale convective sort of systems, these small non-tropical lows. They sometimes come off the eastern coast, and then once they hit the Gulf Stream, they automatically blow up, and sometimes are able to spin up within hours into a tropical system. Some notable examples such as Bertha of 2020, and other examples too. But the Gulf Stream and off the East Coast, sometimes with weak systems, we can watch it for development early on in the season, and it's still kind of on the cooler side. We're only just starting to see 26 readings making their way up the Gulf Stream, right against the coast of the United States, just below 26 Celsius, and you can kind of see as well the cutoff in terms of the very steep gradient that we see just north of the Gulf Stream, because the Gulf Stream kind of brings ample warm sea surface temperatures from the south into the northern Atlantic, but there's a very steep cutoff once it gets past the mid-Atlantic region, and that is very warm. Sea surface temperatures there in the low teens to even single digits when it comes to degrees Celsius. That definitely wouldn't support at all tropical cyclone development of any sort, or even subtropical development. So we don't really typically look this far north. It's really just along the Gulf Stream where we tend to look for maybe some sort of subtropical thing or two. It is definitely getting warmer. 26 is beginning to make their way up, even some 27s further to the south. But in a few weeks, this will also warm up too, and maybe we'll see something happen. Really quickly, let's run the GFS, see what it does over the next week or so. By hour 90, some people did talk about this on Twitter. I'm not really sure if it's much of a concern, but there is some sort of big moisture plume that makes its way north from the Caribbean and then kind of ends up in the subtropics. And some people are mentioning maybe the environment might be there for some sort of subtropical development to occur, although not much, but you can kind of see, at least with the 12Z run of the GFS. Let's just bring it up hour to 168. You kind of see it stays broad the entire time and doesn't even concentrate all that much We just have the main issue that this will probably be is a bunch of moisture to the Caribbean islands, especially to Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, and then that lifts north and doesn't become much of an issue. And then other than that, in the Atlantic, stays quiet. Nothing of any sort of big interest to talk about in the Atlantic, but still, by the time we get to the end of the next week, we're only at May 27th, so it's still not even into the start of June yet when we tend to get this kind of activity to occur. And we could even take a look at the climatology map too, just to kind of give an idea of where we are right now, roughly right in here. So we're still at the very low end when it comes to climatology on whether or not we get actual tropical activity. We really don't tend to see tropical systems regularly form this time of year, although they have happened, and they did happen in recent years, especially since 2015 or so. But they don't always happen, and is not usually expected, especially since the hurricane season really only starts and still officially starts only on June 1st. But as for right now, we're still on the low end, and even through June and into July, it's not really up until August or even late July when we start seeing a noticeable increase in activity, all the way up to the August 20th point, which is when we start to see the huge ramp up for activity into the peak. That is still ways away though, and that is still weeks into the future. And we still have we're technically still not even in the boundaries of hurricane season in the Atlantic yet. So that is weeks and weeks away from concern, but it is going to come eventually, and by then we'll definitely know how active this hurricane season will be. But when it comes to activity in the early season, obviously we don't have a lot, but we still do have a little bit. And wanting to point to the signs of when something will happen, just take a look at the velocity potential chart by the European. This is the EPS ensemble map updated today. And I actually talked about this on my Twitter yesterday, but it does seem like the European weekly ensembles are hinting at more negative velocity potential anomalies to occur right around the Atlantic. And if you don't know how to read this chart, this y-axis, I think this is the y-axis, this represents dates in time. The black line, if you're looking to the lower end of that, this time going forward, this is the time going forward, this is the time in the past, and this black line represents the current present day, which is May 20th. So from this point onward, what do we see happen in the Atlantic? And one thing you do notice, velocity potential anomalies going towards the blues and the greens. Well, this map, it kind of indicates more blues, but also some greens as well. And when we see these kind of blues here, that indicates negative velocity potential anomalies, which basically means more rising air in the atmosphere. And typically this is one of these signals that we would look at to see whether or not maybe that might mean things could become more favorable atmospherically for activity to occur in the Atlantic. And notice when this does come in around as well, the time frame we're starting to get into is the first and second weeks of June, and that does fall in line with the start of hurricane season. So that means we could potentially be seeing our first actual chance for development come very soon, and not only for the Atlantic, but for the Eastern Pacific as well. Maybe we'll have a second chance for our first named storm to occur there too. It is coming up soon though. June is still about a week and a half or so away, but I'm pretty sure by then we'll start seeing signals pop up, and there even have been signals from some models, not just the European, that do indicate conditions becoming more favorable towards that time period. And it makes sense. It's the start of June, and that's when we do tend to see our first activity occur anyways. And especially with the Gulf being warm as it is right now, I just showed you, you gotta wonder, maybe this indeed will be when we get our first storm. Maybe it'll be in early June. Still, as of right now, nothing much occurring, and it does look like that, at least to remain that way over the next week. With that being said, though, I'm going to finish it off here. Hope you enjoyed. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to all. If you like what you saw, always encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and of course, share with others as well. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Obviously, expect an update tomorrow. Till then, stay safe, and we'll talk again very soon.